of the rim. Got it! Oh, the slam. Oh, using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot from Curry!
A bit earlier in the month, I watched as LeBron won his 5th NBA champ. Oh, yeah, no, too soon. A bit earlier in the month, I watched as LeBron and the Lakers won the first ever in-season tournament over the Indiana Pacers against newly minted star Tyrese Halliburton as former Pacer Reggie Miller watched on broadcast. Then I thought, wow, Bron played both of these guys and they're very far apart. This accounts for Reggie Miller's last contending team, every Indy star in between, and Halliburton. Insane. So with his 39th birthday coming up as he continues to post top talent numbers, I wanted to explore the first iteration of every team he played against. Not too in depth, just some of the names which may wow you, their ages, etc. And although you can't bet on those guys anymore, DraftKings has got you with all the modern players and teams, including LeBron. You already know we're teamed up with DraftKings to bring all new customers a gift that'll definitely put you in the spirit. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Put some extra jingle in your pocket this season by downloading the DraftKings app and sign up using my promo code DOM2K. If you're already signed up for DraftKings like me, you can get a no sweat bet. Get a bonus bet back if your same game parlay or SGPX doesn't hit. Max reward limits do apply. If you think you know the game and want to bet on multiple teams, you can combine multiple bets together for a shot at an even bigger payout. If sports betting isn't available in your state yet, you can still get in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who use promo code DOM2K and bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code DOM2K only at DraftKings Sportsbook. We had a chat about Indiana in the intro, so let's start there. They were a whole year out from the Malice at the Palace, essentially ending their championship aspirations. This is Jermaine O'Neal in the midst of a lengthy all-star stretch in his career. Ron Artest was 23 and Reggie Miller, as it would turn out, went on to play a whole nother year in the association after this. To add a tiny bit more context, LeBron experienced both prime Jermaine O'Neal and the version that could barely walk in Boston. Peja Stojakovic. It's a name which sticks out to me mainly because of the goated NBA Live 2005 3-point contest. Side note, he was also just really good and missed his preferred era by about 10 years. Anyways, he provided spacing on the squad featuring Mike Bibby and Vlade Divac, a key component to the draft day deal that landed Kobe Bryant on the Lakers. This unit had just recently gone through one of the most infamously reffed playoff series of all time. Also, Chris Webber. A timeline involving remnants of this Kings team up to De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis is insane. Arvydas Sabonis had only recently retired a few months earlier, in case you were wondering. The Phoenix Suns had not yet even been graced with Steve Nash's presence. Stephon Marbury orchestrated the offense at just 26 years old, fresh off of a second All-Star appearance the season before. Leandro Barbosa, who later played an integral part in their contention, was a rookie. They even had Joe Johnson on the squad. This is literally the Phoenix team before the one everybody recognizes from the 2000s. So, before the Nash and Amari Suns, all the way to KD, Book, and allegedly Beal squad. To wrap things up here, Penny Hardaway's leftovers saw playtime in this game as he still somehow had a few years left in the tank. In a relatively short 8 seasons into the future, LeBron would be facing off with Dirk for both their first chances at a title. Here in 03, he battled him along with his soon-to-be Phoenix Sun running mate Steve Nash, who'd only made 2 of his future 8 All-Star teams so far. Other older names included Michael Finley, who he'd soon face in the NBA Finals, and Antoine Walker, who'd failed to form a championship duo with Paul Pierce. The Nash and Dirk Mavs, who accomplished surprisingly little, to the Luka and Kyrie Mavs, whose story is still being written. If you've ever heard of the Jailblazers, most of the core responsible for this tag appeared here, as James squared up with the likes of 22-year-old Zach Randolph, Damon Stoudemire, and Rasheed Wallace, who had a good bit of time remaining before his deal to Detroit. Jailblazers to whatever is happening now with the Scoot Henderson rebuild. His rookie battle with Carmelo Anthony needs no introduction. It's just amazing to consider how Melo recently retired after his last stint involved being a supporting role on LeBron's team. This match also involved Chris Anderson, mainly before the Tats, 29-year-old Marcus Camby, merely a few years removed from going down to Tim Duncan in the finals, a 27-year-old Andre Miller, and John Barry, Brent Barry's older brother, who was inching toward retirement. The beginning of the Carmelo-led Nuggets to the defending champion unit led by Nikola Jokic, who wears his number. When Washington came up on the schedule, they were in only their first season of employing Gilbert Arenas as PG, who had yet to make an All-Star appearance in his brief career. The 2000s Wizards team you recognize hadn't even taken form, as neither Caron Butler nor Antoine Jamison were featured here. Instead, Kwame Brown and Christian Laettner decorated the starting lineup. So a young Gilbert Arenas team which predates the one Braun would face in the playoffs to, Kuzma? The New York Knicks were starting Dikembe Mutombo, which is hilarious given that no one so much as acknowledges his stint in the Big Apple. Both Allen Houston and Charlie Ward remain from the '99 finals team, nearing the end of their respective careers. When this match commenced, as mentioned earlier, Stephon Marbury was a member of the Suns, a random Knicks team a wee bit before the Starbury era to the Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson squad, which Rick Brunson, who played at the time, currently coaches on. Speaking of Caron Butler from a bit earlier, he donned a Heat jersey at this time along with a Rafer Alston pretty far off from retirement. In the starting lineup, Dwayne Wade and Udonis Haslem, a few years before they'd win a championship together, along with Eddie Jones, who'd long been exiled from Kobe and Shaq's Lakers. Yes, Wade was 22 at the time. It's still crazy to think how long he's been gone as LeBron continues to compete. The very start of the Wade era in Miami to the Butler era that continues today. The first of many Celtics meetings. 100 to date to be exact. Of course featuring Paul Pierce, who'd been working on his third All-Star season of a Hall of Fame career. I'd be lying if I said I realized Vin Baker was ever in Boston, though he was in fact the other forward in this game with a couple of years remaining in his career. Kendrick Perkins did not play, but he'd just been drafted and was on the roster at the time. The Boston Celtics, still multiple years away from the Big Three era, to the Jays, who currently remain in the running for a championship, allegedly. Did so side by side with prime Allen Iverson, who'd remain in a Sixers jersey for a good while longer, and Eric Snow, who joined James on an NBA Finals trip a few years later. Iguodala wouldn't appear for another season, bringing us to a random Iverson Philly squad spanning through what feels to be possibly one of the final Joel Embiid units we'll see. Aside from an all-time dynasty, Los Angeles also housed the Clippers, who were still a mess with the remnants of a team Paul George has reiterated he grew up a fan of. Chris Kaman was just beginning his career, next to Corey Maggette and Quentin Richardson, who you can catch on podcasts these days. The most ridiculous name, however, former sharpshooter Glenn Rice saw time on the floor in what would become his final season. We'll call this infant Paul George's Clippers to Paul George's Clippers. LeBron has really seen every iteration of this organization fighting for relevancy. Minnesota flaunted one of its best units in franchise history in '04, hosting soon-to-be MVP Kevin Garnett, leading the way next to Sam Cassell, who'd achieve his first and only All-Star team, along with Latrell Sprewell in his better days, 7 years after having choked his coach in practice. Despite J. Cole's bar and Green Ranger, Mark Madsen actually did play, started even, notching 27.5 minutes while grabbing 6 rebounds. KG's Timberwolves at their peak to a Minnesota squad that currently boasts its best start in franchise history. This timeline encapsulates the Wolves at their best, years and years of failure, back to the Wolves at their best. We'll see, however, I am unsure any roster will date LeBron's career like the Atlanta Hawks. A 26-year-old Jason Terry, who was greenlit for 23 shots this game, with a young and youthful Sharif Abdul-Rahim, who'd made an All-Star just 2 seasons prior. Steven Jackson, 25 years old, hadn't been involved in the malice yet. Rookie Boris Diaw emerged off the bench, and a 28-year-old Jack Vaughn saw 26 minutes of game time. Yes, gray all in his beard, current Brooklyn Nets coach, Jack Vaughn. Whatever the hell this Atlanta team was before Jason Terry had even gone through a whole arc, to Trae Young's Hawks, which I also suspect to be nearing some interesting conversations, whilst Vaughn sits on the sidelines of another young team. They were called the New Orleans Hornets back then, by the way, and this is the version still a couple of years out from drafting Chris Paul. Due to that fact, point guard duties were handled by the uber-athletic all-star Baron Davis, who take part in the We Believe Warriors the same year Braun would make his first finals. Veteran PJ Brown, who participated in Miami and New York's brawl, started at power forward. Steve Smith, who you've seen on NBA TV for what feels like forever, came off the bench, and Robert Tractor Trailer had a roster spot. Incredible. The shared history between the Charlotte Hornets, the New Orleans Hornets, the Charlotte Bobcats, and the New Orleans Pelicans is extremely confusing. For the purposes of this vid, being that it was New Orleans, we'll go Baron Davis to Zion Williamson. Of course, the soon-to-be champion Detroit Pistons looked exactly how you thought. Everybody from the title team minus Rasheed Wallace for the moment, except probably worth noting his current coach was a DNP, only 30 years old. He met them before they were champions, experienced and played a part in their lengthy run, to now experiencing them endure the worst losing streak of all time. Pau Gasol had a Grizzlies jersey on with almost no facial hair, still 2 seasons away from an All-Star appearance and 4 seasons from forming a legendary duo with Kobe Bryant. Although he'd only see 3 minutes of game time, a 28-year-old Jason Williams started at point, with 23-year-old future teammate Mike Miller playing nearly the entire game. Side note, I just saw Mike Miller in the lounge of the Orlando Magic season opener, happily retired and enjoying the festivities. Pau Gasol's Grizzlies near their inception to Jaw Wick's parade. Nothing quite triggers my nostalgia the way seeing Vince Carter in a Raptors jersey will, and I can't quite explain it. Regardless, this is VC in the middle of his prime, about to make a less than graceful exit from the Six. In fact, it's one of the reasons you likely don't realize he and Chris Bosh ever played together. Also, Jalen Rose, who it seems had been on TV for an eternity, was in the starting lineup, not far from witnessing Kobe Bryant's career high. High-flying Vince Carter, who had way more than one left in him, and a Toronto team that relatively recently won their first title, but is also overdue for a full rebuild. Steve Francis was starting at shooting guard for the Rockets, who are about to deal for Tracy McGrady in the very near future. Yao Ming played 82 games in his rookie year, and his sophomore season in progress would bring another healthy 82 before anyone had a clue what the future of his feet would hold. If you've ever seen Katina Mobley in recent years who looks to be pushing 80, he wasn't even 30 at this time, still averaging 16 a game. A tad bit before T-Mac and Yao's Rockets were even a thing, up to a very young core progressing through a rebuild. This includes players like Jalen Green, who were born in 2002. Unfortunately, LeBron missed Jordan on the Bulls by a healthy margin. However, they'd moved on to another fascinating shooting guard in Jamal Crawford, who was in the midst of attempting what would go on to be the second highest field goals per game of his career. In this one, he took 27 shots. Chicago remained 5 years away from returning to relevance by drafting Derrick Rose, who James has outlasted by a long shot. The failing rebuild attempt of Jordan's Bulls to another failed rebuild attempt that's probably about to experience another rebuild. Back to T-Mac, who could have easily been a Bull. The electric scorer put up 28 points a night to lead the league in scoring for 04, already having planted himself as one of the greatest Orlando Magic players there'd ever be. LeBron dueled him in a Christmas Day game you've likely never stopped seeing be reposted year after year. Unfortunately, the remaining roster featured names such as Juwan Howard, Drew Gooden, and ancient Rod Strickland, with a couple more coaches you might recognize such as Monty Williams and Tyronn Lue, who he'd win a title with in a little over 10 years. T-Mac's Orlando Magic to a squad hopefully building around Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, born in 02 and 01 respectively by the way. New Jersey essentially shelled out what was remaining of their contending core that lost the last 2 NBA finals, with Jason Kidd at the helm dishing to a very young Richard Jefferson, who you still see on TV today, and Kenyon Martin, whose son has also competed against James. Possibly the craziest name to see here though, Robert Pack, who you're likely familiar with from Mutombo's Nuggets in the 90s. Jason Kidd's New Jersey Nets leading to the now Brooklyn Nets, who build with young talent, including Ben Simmons, who was supposed to be one of the many, quote, next LeBron James prospects. Yes, his first meeting with the Lakers, and of course Kobe Bryant. Unfortunately, it got cut short due to injury. However, not much more needs to be said here than the fact he literally went head to head with the 04 Lakers, which, if you never noticed, did also include Brian Russell, who Jordan may or may not have pushed off of 7 years earlier. The wildly infamous super team attempt Lakers with Kobe and Shaq to a team he now plays for and has won a title with. When he rolled into Seattle, Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis were leading the way, both still in their 20s, with Ray just having been freshly removed from a Bucks jersey. Another one of Rick Barry's kids and Brent Barry filled out the starting lineup as well, who's gone through a whole stint of being on NBA TV and basically disappearing since. Seattle with 5 years left in existence to the now Oklahoma City Thunder, who've existed for over a decade, and employ possible Rookie of the Year Chet Holmgren, who'd barely turned a year old when LeBron was drafted. His story with the Warriors began without much drama, led by explosive dunker Jason Richardson next to a host of older names such as Speedy Claxton and Clifford Robinson, a face seen rather clearly in one of Jordan's top career moments. Continuing future coach watch, Avery Johnson saw 15 minutes of action here whilst playing in his final year, not so far away from helping Dirk and the Mavs reach their first ever finals appearance on the sidelines. Golden State, in a time where their most prominent history belonged to Run TMC, through them having become a dynasty led by the greatest shooter of all time. Also in an era where Reggie Miller was still the greatest shooter of all time. Greg Ostertag still held the starting big spot for Utah at only 30 years of age, which actually makes his random comeback attempt later on via the G League in my childhood make sense. I thought he was way older at the time. Andrei Kirilenko gave reason for excitement, putting together his only All-Star appearance, while Deshaun Stevenson would get his first shot at a guy he would go on to grow disdain for in the coming years. So, Greg Ostertag starting Utah Jazz, followed by, ugly jerseys? Oh, here's one. I may have been wrong about Atlanta. How about catching Michael Redd at 24 years old, posting a healthy 82-game All-Star season for the Milwaukee Bucks? Yes, the same Michael Redd that got forced into premature retirement over a decade ago. He shared the floor with a ready-to-drop Tony Kukoc, who saw 20 minutes of action in this one, which I'll admit I've never seen bro in a Bucks jersey ever. Milwaukee featuring Prime Red and Tony Kukoc to Giannis, who has since made it a city of champions and accounted for an evolution in basketball. Fitting to save this dynasty in the making for last, as LeBron's first bout with the defending champs came a little later in the season, where he'd catch Hedo Turkoglu donning a Spurs jersey for the only time in his career. Being the beacon of consistency they were, San Antonio mostly housed everyone you'd expect, including Manu Ginobili with hair. But some of the more unusual names to appear were Ron Mercer, who just fell victim to a Michael Jordan chase down block 2 seasons ago, and Kevin Willis, who can be seen in photos competing against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yeah, other than that, this roster looked surprisingly close to what James would face in the finals 3 seasons later, where they'd win one of the 2 titles remaining in their run. That brings us to the Spurs core, when the franchise only had 2 championships, all the way to what they hope will one day become another dynasty under Victor Wembanyama, who presumably presents yet another evolution of basketball. Well, yeah, in conclusion, LeBron James has played basketball for a really long time. I have another video from earlier in the year putting his entire career into context, so if you'd like to see that one, click the card. Also be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed, while hitting the bell next to my name if you want notifications every time a new video drops. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.